are pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. This is the mid-year book Freakout tag, 2021 version. I've done them for 3 years before. Let's get started. So, this is a costume change. I am going to begin normalizing doing my videos in chunks over several days or weeks, and there will be costume changes, and I want you all to get used to it. So I was really rushed. Tried to do this mid-year book Freakout tag on the fly Saturday night. It's now Tuesday night or something, and I've got some changes and some additions and whatnot, and I'm not going to comment on costume changes, and if you don't like it, well, I don't know what you should do. But anyway, so this little insertion is that I forgot to mention the creator. There isn't much to say. The creator was IsThatChami, C-H-A-M-I. That channel does not exist, but that is who originated the tag. So, I wanted to say that. Number 1, best book you've read so far in 2021. That was a pretty easy one. The Yield by Tara June Winch. This was a buddy read with Greg of Supposedly Fun. I loved it so much that for the first time in my adult life, I think for the first time in my life, I immediately started rereading it. My reread is going very slow, which is exactly what I wanted to do, a slow reread. I was so emotionally connected to this novel that I couldn't think of anything to say about it. It was just this emotional kind of inarticulateness, which is the sign of a Sean book that goes in pride of place in like one of the top 10 books I've ever read. So I figured, why not try something new? Reread it, and then maybe you'll be able to put two words together to talk about why it means so much. It is just a gorgeous, important, fabulously political, angry, emotionally compelling, fierce, militant work of fiction. It's what literature is for. 2, the best sequel you've read. I am now reading the second volume of the Alexandria Quartet, which is Balthazar by Lawrence Durrell, and I am about halfway through. I'm loving it. I reread Justine, the first volume. Loved it even more than when I read it about a year ago. So that would be it. But also I read this year the complete trilogy of the Country Girls trilogy by Edna O'Brien, and so I guess Volume 2 and Volume 3 were also, I would say, the best sequels I've read this year. Number 3, a new release you haven't read yet but want to. So that was easy, although there's many, but the one that I'm most eager to read, in fact I think I'll probably get to it next month, is this Indigenous novel from Canada, Nupaming by Leanne Betasamosake Simpson. I have done so much research. I'll put a link in the show notes to where the one video I managed to find where the author pronounced her own name. How did I do?
Betasamosake?
Yeah, I think I got it. Leanne Betasamosake Simpson. Even though I'm the Canadian, Brian of Bookish has read this, and it's his book of the year, and he did it as a buddy read with Mark Nash. I can't remember if Mark was quite as enthusiastic as Brian was, but I think Brian's read it twice this year, so I must get to it. I have not read anything she has written. I have another book of some collection of her poetry and prose, but this novel is... Oh, the subtitle is The Cure for White Ladies, and it's experimental with lots of little prose pieces. I haven't watched Brian's full review or whatever because I want to go in blind, but the fact that he's as enthralled with it makes me all the more eager to finally get to it. Number 4, the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I cannot be limited to only one, so I have 4 or 5. In no particular order, but I will mention the publication date. I don't know if the publication date is in Canada or where in the world, but at some place in the world, these books will be published on these dates. The Indigenous Canadian author Katherena Vermette, author of the wonderful, incredible 2016 novel The Break, has a new novel for adults coming out. September 28th. It is called The Strangers. I am so excited. It wouldn't be a Sean the Book Maniac video if I couldn't do a little poke at all the Sally Rooney detractors out there, but I am quite sincerely stoked to try her next novel, Beautiful World, Where Are You?, coming out September 7th. The Canadian writer, one of my very most favorite writers, Miriam Toews' next novel is coming out October 5th. It's called Fight Night. I love her based on two novels, All My Puny Sorrows and Women Talking. Both extraordinary. Anything earlier than that I've tried of hers, I wasn't a big fan, but those two just bowled me over. And then a couple from Seagull Press, the fabulous Indian publisher that puts out a whole bunch of off-the-beaten-track translated fiction. Two coming out that I talked about in a reaction video to their summer catalog. The White Bathing Suit by Thorvald Steen, translated by James Anderson, coming out August 15th. Thorvald Steen is a Norwegian writer, I believe, and this is a novel about disability, family secrets, and Norway's eugenics past, which just sounds amazing. And all of the ones that I talked about in that video, which I will link in the show notes, I'm looking forward to. But another one that I would pick for the purpose of this video is Boat Number 5 by Monika Kompaníková, translated by Jeanette Livingstone. Kompaníková is a Slovakian novelist. That one, I believe, is coming out in mid-October. 5. Biggest disappointment. I would say The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. I didn't hate it, but it was a 3-star read for me, and it had been hyped. I think way overhyped, although lots of people thought it was an excellent novel. I thought there were parts of it that were excellent. You will not hear me talk about it in an extremely derogatory kind of rant, because there were things that I really appreciated about it, but I think it's one of those examples of a book that suffered because the hype was so overwhelming, and there were parts of it that I thought were really weak, especially in the second half. Number 6, the biggest surprise, and that hands down is the middle grade novels by Beverly Cleary, who died a few months ago, and I had never really heard of Beverly Cleary until she turned 100 years old, and everybody started talking about her. But as a Canadian growing up, I read a lot of Enid Blyton and so on, and I'd never encountered Beverly Cleary's novels. But I read one the week that she died. It happened to coincide with me having a lot of pain in my foot. I won't make a big story of that here. And I realized that reading middle grade fiction was quite soothing when I was feeling really sucky and immobile and sorry for myself. It was just this wonderful way to entertain myself and kind of pamper myself. So I read 2 Ramona Quimby novels. I started with Ramona Quimby, age 8, and then I went back to her first one. I don't remember the title of that, but I read those. In fact, I did them on audio in about 10 days, and I want to continue with the Ramona Quimby books, and Beverly Cleary is now near and dear to my heart. The next time I get sick, I hope I never get sick again, or have any pain in my life, but when I do, I know that middle grade fiction, which I poo-poo just like I continue to poo-poo YA and everything else, all genre fiction, but middle grade, it works for me. 7. Favorite new author. I would say Edna O'Brien. I had only read one collection of short stories until this year, and then I read the 3-volume Country Girls trilogy and loved it, so I would put her as a new favorite. 8 is newest fictional crush, and this year I don't have one. Newest booktube crush. Gotta buy me a drink first. Newest favorite character. One of my top reads this year is Detransition Baby by Torrey Peters, a fabulous, important, entertaining novel released in 2021. And the protagonist, Reese, is hands down my favorite new character. A trans woman with a screwed up love life that I totally related to, that is fearless and confrontational and emotional and a powerful woman, a model for us all. 10. A book that made you cry. Let's see. This one I haven't thought about. Some of the most moving passages I've read in any of fiction this year would be from The Slap by Christus Cholkas. I don't remember which scenes now, but I remember being almost moved to, getting, I don't cry ever, and from reading maybe once in my life, but feeling like I was deeply moved. I would add one more, and that is the Irish novel that just came out a few weeks ago, What Willow Says by Lynn Buckle. I have a full review. It is a fabulous little novella about a grandmother, an artist grandmother, living on a bog in Ireland, and her deaf grandchild whose parents are dead, and she's looking after it, and together they explore all the natural surroundings around them, and especially the willow trees, and the grandmother is haphazardly learning sign language and how they communicate, and the granddaughter, who is just an unforgettable character in the novel, wants to know what the willows sound like. What are they saying, Grandma? And it's about that. It's beautiful, and it was extremely moving. So, that one, too. 11, book that made you happy. That question is ridiculous. Who reads to become happy? Fuck, what is this? 12, favorite book to film adaptation. Film? 13, favorite review you've done this year. That's a good question. Maybe none. You tell me. And number 12, the most beautiful book that you brought into the house. This was my obvious choice, and then I started to research and think, I'm not sure if this was a 2021 acquisition. It might have been late 2020, but then I stopped researching it because I'm using it, damn it. It is the most beautiful book I brought into the house, and it may have been in 2021, and we're just going to go with it. And that is this work of French history, The Last Libertines by Benedetta Craveri. And it is, look at that cover. It's just the cover. There's nothing else about it that's beautiful, but it's an oversized hardcover, chunky bugger, and that cover illustration is to die for. It is about a group of 7 aristocrats who were coming of age in their youth at the time of the French monarchy's last gasps. And this historian, she is an Italian historian, professor of French literature, and this is her research into the way these 7 young aristocrats coped, changed, and what fate they met. It sounds absolutely fascinating, but for the purposes of this prompt, that cover. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? So this one is where I tell you, and if you've been following along, you already know this, because Shaggy Bane won the Booker last year, I vowed that if it did win the Booker, that I would read the 2021 Booker long list. So those are the books. I haven't promised to read the long list by the end of the year. I will start reading the long list as soon as it's announced in late July, right? Does anybody know the exact date? Please leave a comment. And then once the short list is announced a couple months later, then I will focus on the short list and plan to have it read before the winner is announced. And then I will take my sweet time to finish reading the long list. But that is most of what I am going to be reading for the rest of 2021. So I'm actually going to be reading books that other people are reading. What the hell? Going to ruin my image. This was kind of a slapdash tag, so I have not prepared anybody to tag. I'm just going to go to my comments and tag some people. Scallydalling about the books, Anja's book chatter, Sonia of an enthusiastic reader, Kim of Middle of the Book March, Gina Stan Your Books, Dan of Guilty Feet, Cousin of Always Doing, Nell and Scott of Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, of course. And you. Thanks for watching.